Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world where sleep doesn't come all at once, where the silence after midnight isn't empty, but filled with secrets, songs, and silent footsteps across golden sand. You're not in your bed anymore. You're stretched out under stars, so bright they hum, with dust clinging to your eyelashes and something warm, maybe hope. Maybe danger burning thus beyond the dunes. In this world, people don't just sleep once. They sleep twice, and in between, that's when the real stories happen. You might wake to a coded drumbeat that saves a caravan from raiders, or a whispered song that smuggles gold through a kingdom without a single coin changing hands. You might even find that your dream holds the map to a place no chart ever showed. Oh, and one more thing. You probably won't survive this night unless you learn to listen in the dark. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes close. First sleep begins, roughly 4 hours later, though. You blink awake. You're not alone, others in your village are also awake, murmuring softly. One man sharpens a knife, someone else kneels in a corner, whispering to their ancestors. A mother nurses a baby. This twilight intermission is as natural to them as scrolling TikTok at 3 a.m. is to you. Historians still argue whether segmented sleep was universal or more localized, but references to it show up from medieval England to the Songhai region of West Africa. Court records, journals, and even old medicinal texts describe people waking naturally around midnight to do chores, pray, or reflect. Some monks scheduled their nighttime devotions around this rhythm. Others told stories during the interlude narratives, both practical and mythic, sometimes encrypted with trade instructions or spiritual warnings. In West Africa, where oral traditions shape everything from commerce to justice, this intersleep phase often became a key transmission window. The house was still, the fire low, eyes might be closed, but ears stayed open. It's during one of these nights that you hear it, a tale from your uncle about the whispering roads of gold. His voice is slow and rhythmic, laced with drowsy mystery. He tells of caravans that moved only by night, guided not by maps, but coded drumbeats and fire signals that blinked from one sand dune to another. The firelight flickers across his face, casting him in and out of legend. In truth, West Africa's pre-colonial gold trade routes were marvels of silent precision. You wouldn't find road signs or printed maps. Instead, merchants often from different linguistic groups relied on indirect exchanges, gold for salt, salt for textiles. Sometimes, the two parties never even saw each other. Goods were placed in the sand. A pause, then a counter-offer appeared. No words spoken. The process was called silent trade, and it baffled early Arab chroniclers. But your uncle makes it sound like a spy drama. He leans in and whispers, "You don't trade with words. You trade with rhythm." Your aunt chuckles softly. "Don't tell them everything," she murmurs. He winks. Some scholars debate whether these stories were exaggerated over generations. Others argue that oral code wrapped in proverbs, songs, or even lullabies was a functional part of the economic system. What's certain is that sleep in this world wasn't just rest, it was a time for absorbing culture, codes, and cautionary tales. You yawn, stretching out your legs, which have already cramped from lying on the tightly packed millet straw mat. Beds back then weren't exactly posturepedic. In fact, some people slept sitting up or on dirt floors covered with ashes to keep bugs away. Sleep tight might have meant tying yourself to avoid rolling into a fire pit. And yes, some folks swore by crocodile dung as insect repellent. Sweet dreams. Outside, the sky is shifting. Stars blur. You hear the soft scuff of footsteps. Someone's preparing to light a signal fire. Maybe the caravan will pass tonight. Your uncle rolls over and mutters. If they do, they await for the second sleep. That's when the gold walks. That sentence, half nonsense, half proverb, sticks in your mind as your eyelids grow heavy again. The second sleep is coming, and with it, maybe a message in the flames. You wake again, not to birdsong, but to the creak of leather and the muted thud of hooves. Outside your hut, the moon is high and silver, painting everything in ghostlight. You push aside the woven reed curtain and step out barefoot, the packed earth cool beneath your solace. A long caravan snakes its way across the plain, just visible by the faint shimmer of oiled hides, slow and deliberate under the cover of night. This is the real economy, quiet, unhurried, and almost invisible. You're witnessing the gold roads of West Africa in motion. The men leading the camels, Tuareg nomads with their iconic indigo-dyed veils, don't shout or sing. They signal with gestures, slight movements of the hand or flicks of light reflective jewelry. One tap of a staff, a second's pause, then the next camel shifts. It's like watching a living sentence being written across the land. Historians still argue whether these silent codes were truly universal or developed tribe by tribe. Some believe entire languages evolved for trade. Others think most of it was practical intuition shared over time through proximity, rather than design. But whether engineered or emergent, the effect was the same. Gold moved, salt flowed. No one yelled. You crouch low and watch the traders pass, your breath caught in your throat. These are not just merchants, they're data couriers. Each man might carry not just goods, but knowledge. Who has what? Who needs what? Where conflict brews, and where famine has stripped the land bare. And then, there's the gold. Gold here isn't always coins or jewelry. Sometimes it's dust, stored in the hollow of a feathered calabash. Other times, it's hidden in a bundle of straw or packed inside a goat's horn sealed with resin. You once heard about a trader who wore gold dust under his fingernails. Another supposedly braided it into his beard. One camel halts. The leader holds out a single hand, fingers flex. Another man nods and disappears behind a dune. You blink, and they're gone. No loud bargains, no crowds. Just the faint smell of warm animal and crushed herbs left behind. The idea of silent trade is just cinematic, it was real. In some areas, especially along the Niger River, traders from the north and south who didn't share a language used this system. One group placed goods on a flat rock or patch of sand, then backed away. The other group came, examined the goods, and left their offer beside them. If the first group approved, they took the offer and left. If not, they waited. Sometimes this dance went on all night. No talking, just gestures. Trust or the illusion of it was everything. You shuffle closer to the embers of a watchfire, the wind tugging lightly at your robe. The firekeeper is an older woman, her hair braided into thick coils that shimmer with oil. She stares into the coals and murmurs, "The north is greedy this season. They trade fast but look nervous." She doesn't elaborate. She doesn't have to. You've learned that within these trades, coded observation is courtesy. Body language, eye contact, even pacing all hold meaning. Behind you, a group of children emerge, rubbing their eyes. One clutches a small wooden toy shaped like a camel. Another carries a bowl of millet porridge, steaming despite the hour. A midnight meal, unusual. The between-sleep window often meant snacking. In some cultures, it was a time for digestion, comfort, or even a second helping of dinner for the night laborers. You sit with them and sip from a shared gourd. The porridge is bland, but the moment is rich. This is how communities pass down memory. Not by textbook, but by repetition. You'll remember this night not because of the taste, but because of the rhythm. Someone nearby begins to hum a tune, slow and low. It's a melody you've heard before, but tonight you catch new words tucked inside it, names. Maybe a reference to the yellow salt people and a phrase that sounds like Red Path West. Is it just a lullaby? Or is it a code? Fringe historians and folklorists have long debated whether many traditional songs served dual purposes: entertainment for children, encrypted messages for adults. A verse might describe a clever fox, but refer to a rival village. A change in tempo could hint at urgency. In a world without text or email, oral messaging became an art form layered, rhythmic, and plausibly deniable. You lie back again, arms folded behind your head. The sky's changed already. Orion has tilted. Time is moving, even if no one announces it. Your village runs on the stars, not bells. The merchants run on instinct. And you're trying to make sense of it all before the second sleep steals your thoughts away again. Just before your eyes close, you remember something your uncle once said: gold travels quietest in the dark. But the real value, what it buys, that echoes long after. You're not sure what he meant, but maybe, when the drums return, you'll understand. You don't wake this time you're called. A soft hand brushes your shoulder, not urgently, but with the same calm intent as someone adjusting a blanket. A low whisper follows. They're meeting near the grove. You don't ask who. You already know. This is the hour between the two sleeps, and the world here is fully awake, but it isn't asleep either. It hums, quietly, like a drum with the skin just lightly tapped. In the West, sleep has long been packaged as a single, neat 8-tower block, tidy, efficient, modern, but before industrial clocks hijacked your brain, the body knew better. It wanted that in-between space. It used it. And in places like pre-colonial West Africa, this twilight zone was not just functional, it was sacred. You slip on your wrap and head toward the grove, the ground still cool from the night. The trees ahead sway lightly, their branches outlined in moonlight. You step carefully, because this hour holds more than stories, it holds rituals, deals, and sometimes justice. Tonight, it's something quieter. You arrive at a small clearing where 3 elders are already seated. A 4th, barely older than you, kneels nearby, head bowed. His hands are red with dye, maybe henna, maybe ochre. One of the elders speaks, slow and even. Tell it again, with no lies this time. This is no formal court. There are no written laws here, no documents, but there is memory. And memory doesn't forget, especially when it's shared during the sacred watch between sleeps. Historians still argue whether this intersleep period was seen as holy or simply useful. Some say the dark hours allowed cooler heads to prevail in disputes. Others believe people were just bored. But in many cultures, including those of the Sahel, these hours became unofficial time for resolution, quiet truth-telling without the buzz of daylight egos. The boy speaks, voice cracked with fear and exhaustion. You catch only parts: a goat, a missing gourd, a false accusation. The elders listen, they say little. Occasionally, they look at the stars as if the sky might settle the matter. You watch, trying not to fidget. This isn't just gossip or bedtime drama. It's how your community holds itself together, not through written contracts, but through collective attention, especially when the world is silent enough to hear the weight of someone's truth. Eventually, a verdict is reached. The boy will work for the wrong family during next week's salt exchange. Not punishment, exactly balance. The elders stand, stretch, and return to their mats. You do the same. The wind has shifted slightly. In the distance, a lone drum taps out a rhythm. 2 beats, silence. 3 beats, then nothing. You count to 20. Nothing again. You're learning to read these silences the way some read books. Each village has its own rhythm code. And while not all of them use drums, some prefer whistles or flickering firelight. Every community has a way to speak without speaking. Tonight's message, likely a warning, or a checkpoint passed, or maybe just a lullaby in disguise. A nearby hut glows faintly. Inside, an old woman sits with her granddaughter, brushing her hair with long, rhythmic strokes. The child is sleepy, but the woman's words are deliberate. She's telling a story about a talking lizard who tricked a gold trader out of his riches and then used them to build a house made of salt. You smirk. Obviously a fable, but listen closely, and you'll hear references to specific trade towns, likely along the ancient road from Jen to Timbuktu, and a few phrases that hint at the quality of salt available this season. If you were a merchant with ears tuned well enough, you'd know what supplies to bring. In Europe during the same centuries, written ledgers and merchant seals dominated commerce. Here, memory and metaphor do the job. Your mind, trained by stories, becomes your filing cabinet. Fringe researchers have even proposed that West Africa's storytelling culture wasn't just a cultural flourish, it was a technology. A way to move data, a way to remember the safe watering holes, the fair traders, the cursed paths, no parchment necessary. Still lying outside, you let your head rest on your arm. The earth smells sweet, mixed with the faint ash of yesterday's fire. You can hear others turning on their mats, or murmuring prayers. This is the in-between. Here, a trader might calculate the weight of gold just by the jingle in a sack. A mother might whisper warnings into a lullaby. A child might fall asleep mid-sentence, only to wake hours later with the moon in a different place and no idea if the story was a dream. One last thing before sleep returns. Your uncle stirs beside you and mutters, "Don't forget the shadows talk louder than the fire." But only if you know how to listen. You don't answer, but you remember. Your second sleep ends not with sunlight, but with a rhythm steady, low, and deliberate. You blink awake and tilt your head. Drumbeats, not ceremonial ones. These are spare, spaced out, a message, not music. You rise slowly, limbs still, heavy with half-formed dreams, and walk to the edge of the village. The sound is clearer now. 3 beats, pause, to short ones. A longer pause, then silence. In the darkness beyond, the desert breathes. You're not alone. At the edge of the grove stands a Tuareg man, face veiled in deep blue, his eyes scanning the horizon. He's been waiting. For what? Not you, exactly, but someone like you. A young listener, a watcher, an apprentice in the language of shadows. He doesn't introduce himself. He simply gestures for you to sit. So, you do. He begins with a whisper, a story, not exactly, more like a map, folded into parable. His words slide into a low chant, something about a jackal who stole water from the Wind and had to repay it with gold teeth. You're confused. At first, the phrases twist and blur. But then it clicks. The jackal is a trader. The wind is the northern route, dry, fast, risky, and gold teeth. That's not metaphor. It's literal gold coined, minted, and shipped through secret dunes. You glance at the man, who continues speaking in that same sleepy tone, like he's singing a child to sleep. But you can feel it. This is code. These whispered exchanges weren't rare. In fact, among West African traders, especially those connected with long-distance Saharan networks, coded speech was an essential skill. It allowed sensitive information like market values, enemy routes, or bandit movements to pass between individuals who might be surrounded by curious ears. In some cases, entire dialects existed within larger languages purely for trade, layered and rhythmic, often misinterpreted as myth or nonsense by outsiders. Historians still argue whether this level of linguistic encryption was intentional from the start, or simply evolved as oral traditions matured. Some claim that griots, those epic storytellers and historians, were trained in these twilight tongues from childhood. Others believe it was more spontaneous and art born from survival. You're inclined to believe the former, because here you are, sitting cross-legged in the dirt, listening to a man rap economic intelligence in a bedtime riddle. Suddenly, he stops. He points toward the horizon. There, barely visible against the dull glow of the pre-dawn sky, a small flicker pulses, a fire, carefully shielded. It flares, dims, flares again, repeated. He says, you hesitate, then you try, long, short, long, pause, long, short, he nods. Good, that's the water message. The well is still open. You didn't expect that. Even the fire is speaking in code. In a world without phone towers, without written signposts, these were the signals that kept civilizations alive. A wrong turn on the gold road wasn't just inconvenient, it could kill you. So firelight was trained to talk. A flare meant safe passage. A flicker could mean bandits near. A sudden extinguishing. Run. You sit there a while longer, the Tuareg man occasionally offering another riddle, another rhythm. Then, just as the sky begins to lighten, he stands and nods once. His lesson is over. He melts back into the dunes like he was never there. You walk back into the village, head full of pulse and proverb. Along the way, you pass an elder woman sweeping the dirt outside her hut. She hums a tune that sounds oddly familiar, a cadence that matches the fire signal. You pause. Was she listening to, or is she the source? She catches your gaze, smiles faintly, and says, "Only those who stay up between sleeps learn how to hear properly." You nod. It's barely dawn, and already the world has changed again. Your mat calls to you, but your mind is still racing with patterns. The way the drum beats lined up with the story, the way the fire matched the song, the way even silence has shape. If you listen long enough, you lie down, close your eyes, but now, even in rest, you can feel the code under your skin. It's everywhere, in the scrape of sandals on sand, in the way one man carries water and another does not, in the way a trader lifts his eyebrow at a passing bird, maybe signaling, maybe just squinting. You don't know yet, but you will, because in this world, if you sleep through the night without waking, you miss everything worth knowing. You wake to heat and dust, not the dry choking kind, at least, not yet. This is the soft morning dust kicked up by sweeping, by feet, by the quiet industry of people who never really stopped moving. The sun peaks just over the trees, golden and low. Someone's cooking millet again. A child laughs, already halfway to the river. The day begins not with a roar, but with a gentle shuffle. You stretch on your mat, your back protests, your neck feels kinked. You slept on earth, padded by a woven mat stuffed with grass, and now every joint in your body knows it. You sit up and glance around, watching people emerge one by one like reluctant ghosts from their sleep spaces. The idea of beds as in springy, comfy, mattress and blanket beds is still centuries away for most of the world. Here, and in many other pre-modern societies, sleep surfaces were functional, not luxurious. A tightly packed earth floor might be swept clean, then layered with grass, animal skin, or ash. And no, not always in that order. Ash wasn't just for warmth, it repelled insects, masked smells, and absorbed moisture. You might not smell good in the morning, but you wouldn't wake up crawling in termites either. Some people even slept on slightly raised wooden slats with gaps between them, not for comfort, but to let snakes slide through underneath instead of over you. How's that for a mattress ad? Historians still argue whether these early beds were truly meant for rest or were simply places to wait out the night. Some anthropologists suggest that in certain climates, especially in the Sahel and equatorial regions, sleep was less about full relaxation and more about conserving enough energy to keep moving. The idea of deep rest might have been secondary to not dying of heat stroke or scorpion bites. You step outside and wave at your cousin, who's already squatting near the fire, stirring something thick and sticky in a pot. You greet her, and she asks, casually, "Dream anything strange?" This isn't small talk. Around here, dreams are data. She listens carefully as you describe the odd, fragmented images from your second sleep. A goat with golden hoofs, a river flowing backwards, a man with a drum for a face. She nods thoughtfully, then scoops a portion of millet into a calabash bowl and hands it to you. "You're going to meet someone today," she says. "Someone from the West, probably loud." You almost laugh. "Because of a dream goat," she shrugs. "Because of the goat and the river," and she's probably not wrong. Dream interpretation in many parts of pre-colonial West Africa wasn't just mysticism, it was strategic. Traders often relied on their own or others' dreams as informal omens. Whether it was superstition or psychological insight, no one ignored a strong dream, especially not when gold was involved. You eat slowly, still watching the path that winds out toward the desert. A few traders have already packed up, Their camels grunt and shuffle. Their bags woven and patched, yet sturdy bulge with trade goods. Maybe gold, maybe coal and nuts, maybe something you're not supposed to ask about. One of the traders calls over to your uncle. Something in Bambara, you only catch a few words. Path, soft, Northgate, and something about an ankle eater. You raise an eyebrow. Ankle eater, you ask. Your uncle snorts. Scorpions. Oh, of course. He tightens a sandal strap and adds, you'll understand someday. The road always teaches you where to place your feet. You believe him. These gold roads, crude dirt paths, and invisible lines across endless terrain aren't marked by signs. They remembered through injury, story, and scars. A pile of stones here means water. A broken tree there might signal danger. A merchant's limp might be the best map you'll ever read. As the sun rises higher, the mood shifts. More movement, more voices. No one's sleeping now. But just a few hours ago, in the dark pause between the two sleeps, these same people were whispering stories, arguing, listening to drumbeats. You wonder, which is the real world? The loud bustle of morning or the intimate hush of night? You think back to the Tuareg man's riddle about the jackal and the wind, about the rhythm in the firelight, about how your cousin read your dream like a market ledger, about your aching back on a bed of ash. There's knowledge in discomfort here, and also practicality. You watch your cousin sweep her sleeping area clean of ash and scatter fresh leaves. She arranges her sleeping mat near the wall, angles it slightly, and hangs a bundle of dried herbs above where her head will rest tonight. Cleans the air, she says. Keeps the snakes out. And the bad dreams, you nod. You're beginning to see that rest in just about closing your eyes. It's preparation. It's protection. It's cultural muscle memory. In this village, where luxury is a well that doesn't go dry and wealth travels on camelback, comfort is less about softness and more about security. You don't need a fluffy pillow, you need to know you'll wake up safe, that your fire stayed lit, that no footsteps crept past the mat. As you lean back against the cool mud wall, you hear a familiar tune drifting through the air, someone singing the lizard story again. Same rhythm, same melody. But today, you catch a new verse, something about a path made smooth by gold dust and goat's blood. You close your eyes and hum along, trying to memorize the cadence. You never know when it might mean more than it seems. The heat is climbing. By midday, it presses down like a heavy hand on your shoulders. The air barely stirs, even the goats look defeated, lounging in the slivers of shade between huts. No one moves fast, not unless they have to, not unless gold is on the line. You find yourself in the village square, where a small group gathers in loose shade, half under a thatched awning, half beneath the fronds of a date palm. An elder Griot begins humming. You recognize him, his voice always shows up right before something important is about to be said. Everyone else quiets down. The Griot doesn't start with a speech. He starts with a rhythm, tapping a carved stick against a calabash drum on his lap. The beat is irregular, hypnotic, like the footsteps of a limping animal or the stagger of someone walking too long without water. Then he starts to speak. It's a story about a trader who left with 10 camels and came back with none, yet still richer than when he left. People chuckle at the absurdity, but they lean in. Because no one here believes the story is really about camels. You watch, entranced. The Griot's words spiral into layers. There's a mention of a red hill, which you suspect refers to a copper mine. A woman with millet eyes might be a code for a trading partner from the east. A thunderclap that sang into directions almost certainly points to trouble on the river route. This is not just performance. This is encrypted news, here in West Africa. Storytelling, and just for fun, it's infrastructure. It's a neural network for oral economies. These stories pass along messages, teach moral codes, preserve histories, and when handled just right deliver logistics. Historians still argue whether the Griots served as neutral record keepers or subtle influencers, whether they relayed facts or nudged alliances. But in this village, no one doubts their importance. When the griot speaks, deals get made. Routes change. People pay attention. You scan the faces around you. A woman with salt crystals in her hair from the drying pans. A man with dusty feet and a curved dagger tucked casually at his hip. A young boy chewing a stick, eyes half-lidded but ears tuned in. Everyone is decoding. Everyone's thinking. What's real? What's warning? What's invitation? When the griot finishes, he lets the last beat hang in the air. No one claps, they just nod. The story's not over but it's paused. Like a sentence waiting to be finished by action. You lean back and realize something. In this village, daytime storytelling serves a different function than those whispered midnight tales. The night is for intimacy, for confession, for the liminal space between oneself and the next. But the day is for action. And today's tale, it was a call to move. You're still thinking about it as you wander past the market stalls. Their modest woven baskets of ground nuts, carved tools, bundles of dried fish, but they hum with subtle energy. People exchange not just goods, but phrases. Phrases you now understand might mean far more than they appear. To women barter over cloth. It's not worth the walk to Red Rock, one says, tugging a corner of the fabric. The seller shrugs. Red Rock's not the same since the thunder fell. Neither woman laughs. You pause. Red Rock, thunder, the griot story. You're witnessing the ripple effect of narrative transmission. A code dropped into the water at noon that's already spreading outward, shaping decisions. Traders might change direction. Prices might shift, and none of it is written down. You pass by a boy squatting in the shade, drawing in the dirt with a stick. He's sketching camel tracks. You think, or maybe a route. You ask what he's drawing. Nothing, he says. You smile. That probably means everything. Some researchers argue that these kinds of incidental codes, doodles, casual sayings, offhanded jokes played a major role in how trade information moved in oral societies. With no central news source and no formal archive, data traveled in winks, in rhymes, in gossip half heard by someone pretending not to listen. It wasn't sloppy, it was genius. Because if raiders captured you, what could they take? Your memory. You round a corner and nearly run into a group of women pounding millet. The rhythm of their pestles is hypnotic. It syncs strangely with the griot's earlier beat. You listen more carefully. Are they singing the same song? A variation? It hits you. This song is a reply. And suddenly the whole village feels like a web of call and response. The griot speaks in code. The market replies in code. Even the sound of cooking and pounding and walking might carry subtle counterbeats, warnings, confirmations, invitations. In a world where sleep comes in segments, where rest is punctuated by story, where a child's dream might guide a merchant's choice, everything matters. Every whisper, every beat, every step. And today, as you stretch your back and find a sliver of shade to rest in, you know you've just heard something bigger than a tale about camels. You've heard the market speak, and tomorrow, when the traders leave, they'll carry more than goods on their camels. They'll carry the story. You wake again not from sleep this time, but from heat and noise. The sun is high, too high. You've overslept your rest break, and now the village is humming with the tension of business. Pots clank, animals bray. People argue not angrily, just with purpose. It's the sound of a place that knows its time is precious, because so much of it gets spent waiting for coolness, for safety, for signs. You blink hard and drag yourself upright, the world slightly too bright. It's hard to believe just hours ago the same people were whispering in the dark, playing drums in code, and brushing dreams into lullabies. Now, they look like they're trying to beat the clock, and in a way, they are. Because the clock is new here, and it's annoying. There's a faint clanging in the distance. Bells, not local ones. European, carried in by travelers, traders, priests, and, eventually, colonizers. These bells don't ring for ceremonies or animals, they ring for time. And time, suddenly, has rules. You rub your face and head toward the edge of the square, where a small crowd has gathered around a traveling merchant. He's holding something shiny metal, mechanical, and deeply suspicious. A clock. No one really understands it, but they're fascinated, because it's order, packaged, a promise of consistency. A tool for traders to regulate their sleep, their stops, their deliveries, but also a tool to control. Historians still argue whether clocks help civilize chaos or simply disguised it in gears and dials. But in West Africa, where sleep once rose and fell with the sun, with the body, with the stars, this new kind of time meant disruption. A regulated sleep cycle 8 hours straight, starting at 10 p.m. Alarm at 6 a.m. would have sounded absurd to your ancestors, not because they were lazy or ignorant, but because it ignored the rhythms of the land, the heat, the drumbeat, the fire, the voice of the elder whispering just before dawn, and most importantly, it ignored need. A trader on the salt route can't afford to sleep just because it's bedtime. A mother with a baby tied to her back can't nap on a schedule. And in places like this, where predators roam and caravans move at night, sleep must be as flexible as your sandal straps. Yet, now, you see things changing. In the village, some traders try to mimic the outsider's schedule. They rise early, though it's still dark. They try to keep logs, to write things down instead of committing them to rhythm and rhyme. One man you know even bought a pocket watch, though the rumor is, it ticks backward. Still, he shows it off like it's gold. You watch him now, fiddling with the tiny dial, muttering to himself as he times something, maybe how long his camel takes to chew a bundle of grass. You're not sure he knows what he's doing, but you are sure he thinks it gives him power. And maybe it does, but power always has a price. The Griot walks by, squinting at the man with the watch, then at the sky. Funny, he says, not looking at anyone in particular. The sun doesn't care what time it is. No one responds, but several people smirk. You follow him. Were things different? You ask, before the clock. He raises an eyebrow. The clock didn't change the sun. Just our excuses. You laugh, but he's serious. He stops beneath a baobab tree and sits, patting the earth beside him. You join him as he begins to speak, not a story this time, but a lesson. He tells you about a time when the church bells arrived in the north, how they divided the night into rigid hours, how they rang to tell people when to work, when to eat, when to pray, even when to dream. They didn't ask the body what it wanted, he says. They told it, he sighs, as if the memory itself weighs something. Before, you could wake in the night and know your place, your thoughts, your fear. Now, people wake up thinking they're late. That strikes something deep in you. You remember just a few nights ago, sitting with the Tuareg man under the stars, decoding fire signals. You remember waking during first sleep to your cousin murmuring a dream that felt like a prophecy. None of that had a timestamp, and yet it mattered. You tilt your head. So, you ask, is the old sleep gone? The Griot shrugs. Not gone, just buried under bells. Later that day, you wander back to your mat, eyes aching from the sun. Your mind's still racing. You try to rest, but the noise of the market clings to you like sweat. The chatter, the footsteps, the faint ticking of that cursed pocket watch. And suddenly, you realize, you're trying to sleep, on a schedule. You roll onto your back and groan. But then, you remember something your cousin said. Sleep when the body calls. Don't make it knock. Double quotes. So, you do. And hours later, when you wake during that old, familiar space between sleeps, you smile, because now you see it clearly. Sleep, like trade, like story, was never meant to be forced into rows and grids. It moves in cycles, in crescents, in waves. The bell might ring, the clock might tick, but the drumbeat, the firelight, the hush between stories, that's where the real rhythm lives. You rise in the blue hour again, that quiet, drowsy space where the world hasn't decided if it's night or morning. The moon is still hanging on, stubborn and pale. The fire outside your hut has dimmed to coals. Around you, Others stir not because a bell rang, not because a clock dictated, but because something inside them knows it's time. Second sleep has ended, not with a jolt, but a sigh. You sit up slowly, feeling your spine realign like stacked jars. Your mat, now slightly damp with dew, is pushed aside as you shuffle toward the edge of the sleeping circle. The coals breathe softly. Someone adds dry grass and a twist of bark. Flame stirs, tea will follow. You've grown to love this part of the cycle. Here, people are less guarded. The day hasn't stolen them yet. They speak softer. They listen better. And now, as a few others gather with warm bowls cupped in both hands, an older man leans in to speak. You've walked west? Yes. He asks, not quite looking at you. You nod. Then you've seen the Bridge of Gold. You pause. No actual bridge exists in that direction. You're sure of it. But of course this isn't about bridges. It's about what bridges mean, he continues. Slowly, the bridge is an idea, a route, a connection that existed long before colonizers mapped the continent in crooked lines and borders. It stretches from the gold-rich forests of the Akan peoples in the south to the salt-choked sands of the Tagaza mines far to the north. But it isn't built with stone, it's constructed with whispers, obligations, secret paths, and ritual. This is where gold doesn't just move. It migrates pulled by trust, rhythm, and memory. Historians still argue whether this so-called gold bridge was an actual network of agreed-upon way stations, or a looser, fluid system navigated by oral maps and seasonal landmarks. Some even claim it only existed metaphorically, an idea passed down to explain how power flowed without empire banners or roads carved in stone. But, as you listen to the man describe it, his voice slipping into a chant, his hand marking tiny invisible patterns in the air, you begin to believe it was real. Just not in the way modern maps define real. He describes traders who never saw each other, only their goods swapped in silent trade beneath moonlight. He speaks of message wines, where scouts would run ahead of caravans to deliver gestures, not letters. And he talks about trust routes, corridors of passage only honored because elders had spoken the right names, offered the right phrases, sung the right fragments of origin myths. It's not about gold, not really. It's about permission. You sip your tea. It's bitter and smoky, but welcome. The older man pauses to refill his bowl. Someone stirs millet nearby, and a child's sleepy hum winds in between the adult conversation. You glance toward the horizon. Light is coming, but you feel that this twilight zone is where knowledge sits. Not in the day, in the night, but here. You remember stories your uncle told, of traders who never left home, yet whose names opened roads. Their influence was sung, not seen. One such man, he said, was blind, yet he moved gold from jungle to dune with nothing but reputation. You ask the old man if such traders were real. He chuckles, real, as the wind. You don't see wind. You feel it, that's enough. It sounds like a riddle, and maybe it is, but also, maybe it's the rule. Later, the village begins to stir properly. The children rise with tangled hair. Water is fetched. Animals bray. The day asserts itself. But as you walk back toward your sleeping mat, something catches your eye. A string of pebbles arranged just outside your doorway. At first glance, meaningless, but you've been learning. There are 5 small stones in a curve, one slightly flattened, one positioned a little away from the rest. You remember a tale from a few nights ago, the lizard who built a house of salt. In the 3rd verse, he escapes by following a path that curves like a fish hook and leaves one tooth behind. You stare at the pebble arrangement. Is someone telling you to follow that route? Warn you off it? Invite you? You scan the square, but no one looks your way. It could have been a child's game. Or something older, something important. You don't move the stones. Later, when the sun is high and the market buzzes, you'll pretend not to notice them. But tonight, during the next pause between sleeps, you'll return and look again. You'll see if the message has changed. You'll test whether the story still echoes. Because now, you understand, sleep isn't silence. It's the space where the real messages move. Evening creeps in like a cat, slow, quiet, and fully in control. The heat breaks gently, like someone lifting a heavy blanket off your chest. Shadows stretch long over the packed earth, and the sky turns the soft bruised purple that only comes before full darkness. You feel it in your shoulders, in your breathing. The world's tempo has slowed, and that means it's nearly time again. The first sleep is calling. You settle onto your mat, but this time, you don't close your eyes right away. Instead, you watch, because now you know. This isn't just bedtime. This is transition. This is the hour when the day yields to the in-between, and everything changes texture. Sounds dull down, as if wrapped in cloth. The last murmurs of trade drift through the village, someone negotiating a sack of coal and nuts for dried fish. A soft clink of beads pass hand to hand. And somewhere beyond, in the gold-streaked dunes, caravans are moving again. They always travel at night. Not because it's romantic, but because the sun here is brutal. Sleep isn't a luxury on these routes. It's a strategy. Caravan guards and camel drivers catch rest in pieces, leaning against beasts of burden or lying under cloth shadows. No one sleeps through the night. They sleep with the night inside it, shaped by it. You lie back and think of them now. Somewhere out there, a lone traveler is probably stirring from his nap, brushing sand off his chest, ready for another 6 hours of quiet motion. Historians still argue whether these nighttime journeys were driven entirely by climate, or whether there were deeper, ritualistic reasons for avoiding daylight on the gold roads. Some believe the dark offered more than safety, it offered privacy. The ability to pass without being counted, tracked, taxed, the right to exist without witness. You can't help but wonder how much gold has passed through the desert completely unseen. How many fortunes made and lost while the world slept. You close your eyes and let yourself drift into first sleep. This time, it's heavier, more immersive. You sink into it like a pebble into soft mud. Dreams come quickly, and this time, they bring sound. You're walking in a forest, but the trees have no leaves. Only cloth, hanging everywhere, in every color. They flap gently as you pass. From each cloth, a whisper, some in languages you recognize, others in ones that don't even sound human. You keep walking until you reach a clearing. There, at the center, stands a single tree made entirely of sleeping mats, woven and layered, piled in a great column that stretches impossibly tall. At its base, a small flame dances, and you see a figure seated beside it. It's the Tuareg man. He doesn't look up, but says, "It's your turn." You try to speak, but your mouth is filled with dust. You wake. The coals outside are dim again. Someone nearby is snoring softly. A dog shifts in the dark, sighs, and curls tighter. You've entered the in-between. Not quite sleep, not quite wakefulness. A zone you now recognize as alive. You rise quietly and leave your mat. The village is not silent, it breathes. You hear hushed voices near the fire. The elders are awake again. A few traders are preparing bundles. A young woman hums a tune while twisting her hair. You step outside, your feet cool on the earth. And there, just outside your doorway, the pebble message is gone. In its place, 3 small sticks, one bent, one straight, one crossing them both like a bridge. You pause. You've heard this one. The story of the clever boy who avoided war by building a wooden trap no one could pass through without becoming part of it. A puzzle, a warning, an invitation. Someone is speaking to you, but not with words. You glance up, scanning the dark. You half expect to see the Gright in shadow, watching, or your cousin, or even that child who drew camel tracks in the dirt. But there's no one. You return to your mat, mind buzzing. As you lie down again, trying to catch the second sleep, the story keeps unfolding in your head. The sticks, the cloth forest, the fire at the base of the mat tree. What does it mean? And then you remember something else the Tuareg man said once. Most don't dream their own dreams. They inherit them. You close your eyes. And for the first time, You realize second sleep isn't for resting. It's for decoding. The brain reorganizes, replays, reimagines. It pieces together songs and symbols, trade routes and whispers. You've heard tales of merchants who made decisions based entirely on what they saw between first and second sleep, not out of madness, but out of pattern recognition. Maybe your dream isn't prophecy, maybe it's memory, rearranged. Your breath evens out, your body softens. You let the second sleep take you this time not as a passenger, but as a participant. And somewhere, deep in the folds of your mind, a drum begins to tap. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to say, listen closely, the gold doesn't move by daylight alone. Second sleep ends like it always does, gently, without fanfare. No rooster, no bell, just the gradual return of sound. Breath first your own, then footsteps outside, then the rustle of morning rituals, but this time, something's different. The air feels charged, like the pause before rain. People move with intent, not routine. You sit up slowly on your mat, blinking away dreams that clung too tightly. Today is not ordinary. Today. A caravan departs. You hear it before you see it. Leather straps creaking, camels groaning low, deep-throated sounds that somehow always make you think of ancient songs. Traders murmuring to one another in clipped sentences. A different tone from market-day gossip. This is the sound of people slipping between worlds. You rise, brush off the dust, and walk toward the village gate. Already, a small crowd has gathered, family members, young children, curious neighbors. Some offer dried meat, others tie amulets around wrists or ankles. The caravan leader stands tall in indigo robes, face half-veiled, eyes sharp. His voice is low but commanding. This man knows roots others only whisper about. You edge closer, ears straining. He mentions Kumbi Saleh, Walata, and something called the Whisper Pass. You commit every word to memory. The Whisper Pass sounds made up, or sacred, or both. Historians still argue whether these named routes, often passed down only through oral tradition, were literal paths or symbolic references to ritual permission. Some say the Whisper Pass referred to a dry gorge with echoing rock walls, used by only a handful of traders trusted enough to know the signals. Others claim it wasn't a place, but a window in the season when trade was safe from raiders and wild winds. Either way, no one talks about the Whisper Pass casually. You step back and watch as the camels begin to move. Their long legs fold and stretch in rhythm, like cranes in slow motion. Each beast carries heavy loads, salt slabs, bundles of cloth, maybe even secret compartments of gold dust. The path before them is invisible, yet somehow everyone knows where to go. That's the magic of oral mapping. There are no stone signs, no GPS, just rhythm, memory, and myth. You once heard a griot say, "If you forget the drumbeat, you'll die in the dunes." And now you understand what he meant. These routes are carved not by footfall, but by song. Each bend in the path, each water source, each safe resting point, that's all embedded in narrative. Some of the elders can recite entire desert crossings like lullabies. They know the place to avoid the thorn trees, where the rock whispers before the wind picks up, and the cave where an ancestor once slept and never woke. And now, you realize, you're expected to remember too. A woman beside you places a small pouch in your hand. It smells of salt and herbs. "For the throat," she says. You look at her, puzzled. "Stories don't speak themselves," she adds. You're not just watching anymore. You're being called. Back at your mat, later that morning, you unwrap the pouch. Inside, a pinch of powdered kola nut, a sprig of dried baobab bark, and a small pebble that's been dyed a deep, rich red. A code. You lie back and stare at the sky through the slats of the roof. The caravan is long gone now, a trail of dust on the horizon, but the whisper of its path remains. You think about how these traders have lived for centuries without maps, how the shape of the stars and the curve of a hill have replaced ink and paper, how memory, layered with metaphor, becomes the safest guide. But it isn't foolproof. You've heard the stories, the ones told quietly, after dark, when children pretend to sleep, of caravans that vanished, of false routes whispered by enemies, of dreams gone wrong, because yes, some people tried to use dreams to guide them too often. They stopped listening to elders, ignored signs, and the desert does not forgive. You roll onto your side and close your eyes again, slipping briefly into that post-second sleep daze. In your half-dream, you see a camel with wings of fire. It walks on air above the dunes. Beneath it, words swirl in the sand. You can't read them, but you feel them. The message is clear. Not all that is remembered is safe to follow. You sit up, heart thudding, even as you chuckle at yourself, over-dramatic, but still. You reach into your pouch and tie the red pebble onto a string around your neck, just in case. Later that evening, as the village settles into its pre-sleep rituals, you find the griot again. He's plucking at a stringed instrument, muttering lyrics under his breath. "Tell me about the Whisper Pass," you say. He stops playing. Then, without a word, he pats the ground beside him. You sit. He begins not with the answer, but with a story. Of course, this one's about a hyena with no ears, who tricked the stars into guiding it, only to lose its way when the moon disappeared. It makes no sense, until you realize he's describing the risks of trusting only one form of knowledge. The moon is your dream, the stars, your stories. But the Whisper Pass, that's something else. Something learned by doing. So, you sit, listen, and slowly begin to understand. Dusk arrives as a soft exhale. The market's folded itself away. The fires are dim but alive. Voices taper to murmurs. You're learning to listen for the quieter signals now, the ones that don't shout, like the thud of someone laying out a sleeping mat, the swoosh of dried grass being swept aside, or the simple weight of a shared glance before first sleep. But tonight, something's off. Not wrong, just sideways. The rhythm of the village has shifted, subtly, like a song you've heard 100 times played in a slightly different key. You feel it before you understand it. Then you notice the elders are gathering earlier than usual, and not at the main fire. They're settling beneath the baobab, where only certain stories get told. You follow, slow and silent. As you approach, the air thickens. You recognize the scent of shea oil, sweat, and wood smoke. Someone hands you a calabash of warm drink, thick, sweet, medicinal. No one speaks until everyone is seated. Then, the griot clears his throat. He begins with a question, spoken not to anyone, but to the fire. Where does sleep go? When the body doesn't call it, no one answers. That's not the point. He continues, a tale of a woman who walked so far from her village that sleep forgot her name. She built her own rhythms, alone, without dream or rest, until her body remembered, one day, how to stop. You can't tell if this is myth or memory. But you realize, as he speaks, that tonight's story is not about traitors. Not directly. It's about disruption. You shift slightly. Because you already know what this is about. The outsiders. The ones who arrive not by camel, but by boat. They came to West Africa with heavy boots and unfamiliar smells, and that same mechanical clinking you've heard from the trader with the backward-ticking pocket watch. And with them came new sleep. Or rather, no sleep. They worked through the night, or forced others to. They counted hours like coins. Rest wasn't earned, it was denied. Sleep, which had once been cyclical, sacred, and shared, was sliced into shifts, fragmented into productivity. Historians still argue whether the earliest colonial systems intentionally dismantled African sleep patterns, or if it was an unintended consequence of industrial rhythms being imposed on agrarian and oral societies. Either way, the result was the same. The Whisper Pass fell silent. The gold roads crack not from war, but from time. You feel a chill. Even though the night is warm, the griot's story turns darker. He speaks of villages where songs stopped being sung at night, where drums were banned, where firelight was watched by foreign eyes, where second sleep was replaced by exhaustion so deep, no dreams could form. And you realize, sleep wasn't just forgotten, it was taken, replaced with labor, with fear, with interruption. You remember a joke you once heard from an elder, something about how a man who dreams during a shift will wake up twice as tired. You laughed at the time, but now, you see it wasn't a joke. It was history in disguise. You look around the circle. Faces are solemn. No one sips. Even the children are still, eyes wide. The griot doesn't end the story, he simply lets it fade, like second sleep slipping away before it's finished. Later, as the fire dwindles and people quietly return to their mats, you stay behind. You ask him, can the old sleep come back? He shrugs. It never left, just had to hide. You sit with that for a while, because you've seen it, haven't you? The way people still rise after first sleep. The way dreams are still told like currency. The way coded messages still show up in pebbles, in songs, in the space between footsteps. The gold roads might be broken, but the memory of their rhythm isn't. You return to your mat. The moon is high now, glowing like the eye of an ancestor. You lie down and stare up at it, unsure if you feel peace or sadness, maybe both. Sleep finds you, but not quickly. Your mind loops with the story, the rhythm, the loss. You wonder how many people across the continent still dream in two parts, still wake in the hush of night, unsure whether they're meant to rise or remain still. And then you remember, you have a job, not to rebuild the roads, not yet, but to remember the map, to carry the beat. You close your eyes, and second sleep drapes itself gently over you like an old familiar blanket, and somewhere in the distance, to faint to hear, a camel bell rings. This time, you wake not to sound, but to stillness, thick, intentional, like the world is holding its breath. Second sleep dissolves from your limbs like mist. You blink into the dark and realize you're not the only one awake. Across the square, shapes move slow, careful, not sneaking, just deliberate. A soft whistle cuts through the air, short, then long. You've heard that pattern before. It's a signal. You sit up and wait. Another follows, two short, one high. A rhythm, not unlike the ones you've been learning from the griots, only now. You see three figures near the north path. One turns toward you, just enough to be seen, a nod, a whisper, safe roads. Then they vanish into the trees. You exhale slowly, feeling like you've just glimpsed a ghost. But no, it was real. A quiet departure, coordinated entirely within second sleep. This is how the gold roads survive, not with grandeur, but with precision, with ritual, with trust. You sit near the dying fire, eyes adjusting. An elder is already there, chewing slowly on a root. He doesn't look at you, but speaks. Did you see them? You nod. They move better in the in-between, he says. When the world isn't watching, that makes sense now. Everything that once seemed strange fragmented sleep, midnight rituals, secret songs, it was all infrastructure. An operating system that ran parallel to the waking world. And in that liminal space, real things happen, trade, messages, decisions. You remember how the Tuareg man once called the desert the Great Forgetting, not because it erases but because it hides. And now you see the truth. Second sleep is the space where the forgotten keeps breathing. Historians still argue whether societies with segmented sleep had advantages over those that adopted consolidated rest. Some say the two-sleep system gave room for reflection, negotiation, even intimacy. Others claim it fragmented productivity. But here, under this moon, none of that matters, because you're witnessing something deeper. Sleep as strategy. The elder begins humming an old tune, slow and low. You listen closely. It's not for performance. It's a logbook, noted in the change of pitch, a warning about dry wells, buried in a repeated lyric. A tribute to a mother who once sent her son across the dunes with nothing but a prayer and 3 salted plums. This is no bedtime lullaby. It's survival in 6/8 time. And suddenly you feel the weight of memory, not just your own, but collective, generational, like the dreams of those who came before, folded into your second sleep, waiting to be recognized. The song ends. You don't clap. That's not done here. Instead, you rise and walk the path the travelers took. Not far, just to where the dirt curves toward the bush. There, a small pile of stones sits near a tree trunk. 5 again, only now, they form a spiral. You kneel, the spiral's tight, deliberate. A symbol of return, or delay, or repetition. You've heard 3 versions of that symbol in stories. In one, it means wait. In another, wrong direction. And in the third, it means follow. But carefully, you leave the stones untouched. Back at your mat, your cousin is stirring. She rolls over and mumbles, still chasing shadows. You grin. No, just mapping them. She yawns. That's worse. But there's no malice in her voice, only knowing. You lie down beside her, letting the night wrap around you again. You think about all the systems operating in silence. The way gold moves without ever being seen. The way permission is granted without contracts. The way sleep, in this part of the world, isn't just rest, it's rehearsal. You remember a line the griot whispered once. Daylight tells you what happened. Night tells you why, and second sleep teaches you what to do about it. You close your eyes once more. And in that fragile seam between waking and dream, you see a road narrow, golden, half buried in sand. At its start, a single drum, still vibrating from a beat already played. The message is clear. It's your turn. Morning comes, but you don't feel ready. It's not the tiredness that passed with second sleep, but a kind of resistance. As if your body has adjusted to a different rhythm, and now daylight feels intrusive, too loud, too linear. You move slower than usual, as though emerging from water. Around you, the village reanimates with its usual cadence, water drawn, grain pounded, mats rolled, but something's different. The caravan hasn't returned. You weren't expecting it yet. But still there's a feeling in the air, a kind of collective holding of breath. People glance toward the north path more often. Conversations carry a thread of uncertainty. You overhear 2 elders speaking in low tones. They should have crossed by now. One says, the dunes have their moods. The other replies. It sounds poetic, but everyone knows what it means. Delay can be deadly. You think back to the pebble messages, the sticks, the whispered codes and lullabies. All tools to avoid this kind of thing. But sometimes, even the best prepared paths go silent. You drift toward the griot's fire. He's already there, humming, tuning his instrument with a patience that makes you feel impatient just watching. You sit, waiting, until he speaks without looking up. There are 3 reasons a caravan goes quiet, he says. Trouble, trade, or transformation. You ask what that means. He strums a single string. The note hangs, unresolved. It means, he says, they might be dead, they might be rich, or they might have changed so much. They aren't the people you knew. The idea lands in your gut, because this has happened before. Historians still argue whether some caravans deliberately vanished, diverting routes to form their own trading communities, avoiding taxes or control. Others claim desert raids, banditry, or natural disaster wiped them out, and still others believe the truth is stranger, that some travelers chose not to return, seduced by other worlds along the gold roads. A small knot of family members has gathered relatives of those on the caravan. They prepare offerings, not out of grief, but as insurance. Small pouches of salt, folded cloths, even tears gathered in a calabash. You help. No one stops you. Later, as the sky bruises again into evening, you join your cousin at the sleeping mats. She's already lying down, one arm across her face. Still nothing. You ask. She shakes her head. No drum. No message wind. You lie beside her, the dust cooling beneath your back. As the first sleep takes hold, your mind loops the possibilities. You imagine camels caught in a sandstorm, or traders circling endlessly at a dry oasis. But another part of you, quieter, more rooted, knows better. If there's no news, it's on purpose. Second sleep arrives with heaviness. Like your mind has decided you're the messenger now. In the dream, you are the camel. You walk a path of crushed stars, hooves sinking into constellations. On your back, nothing, no salt, no gold, just silence. Ahead, the whisper past glows faintly, no road, just a shimmer in the air, like heat bending over stone. At the center of the path stands a figure. Not the Tuareg man, not the griot. It's you, but older. And you're humming. You wake suddenly. The fire outside is crackling. Someone's stirring millet. The sky is still dark. You realize you've entered that thin slice between second sleep and morning where thoughts either bloom or break. You sit up. Across the square, someone is walking toward the village gate. They're carrying something, a drum. You follow, quiet as breath. By the time you reach the edge, a few others have joined. The figure sets down the drum, adjusts the strap, and waits. And then 3 beats, a pause, 2 more. It's not a full message. Just a punctuation, a signature. You turn to the griot, who's now standing beside you as if he's always been there. They're alive, he says softly. Not they're safe, not their home. Just, they're alive. That's enough, for now. You return to your mat, brain alight. No words exchanged, no map redrawn, but everything changed. Because now you know the road is still open. And tonight, as you drift into first sleep once more, you know you'll be listening for the second beat. The rest of the message, the truth hidden in half silences. Because on these roads, even sleep travels with secrets. The morning arrives not with fanfare, but with a soft rustling. Palms brushing against thatched roofs, pots clinking faintly, and the unmistakable sound of someone chewing sugar cane too early for anyone's liking. You sit up slower this time. The drumbeat from the night before still lingers in your chest. 3 beats, pause, then 2. Not a sentence, but a heartbeat. A pulse to say, we are here, and now. The village is responding. Not with celebration yet, with preparation. You watch as elders gather near the entrance. They're laying down offerings again, but this time with more structure. Stacks of salt carefully wrapped in cloth, water gourds traced with ash, a folded strip of leather etched with ancient patterns. The griot stands nearby, quiet, humming something low and steady. Not a song exactly, more like scaffolding for one. You know what's happening. The welcome road is being cleared. See, in many West African communities, especially those connected to the gold roads, homecomings aren't just about return, they're about re-entry. Travelers don't just walk back in. They must be received properly, with rituals that cleanse, protect, and confirm they are still who they say they are, because absence can change you. Some never come back the same. Historians still argue whether these rituals were more symbolic or practical. Some say they were spiritual security systems designed to prevent the return of evil spirits or curses picked up along the way. Others believe they were psychological tools to help travelers reintegrate, especially after long, dramatic journeys through the harsh Sahel or treacherous market politics. Both might be true. The griot tells you it's simple. You leave a shape when you go. When you return, you must step into it again or make a new one. You help lay stones along the path, not align a curve. The route through the village entrance is designed to avoid direct lines. Why? Because spirits follow straight paths. Crooked roads keep you safe. And that's when you hear it, the bell, not loud, not close, but steady, measured. Each step followed by a soft metallic jingle. The camels walk, weighted with presence. They're near. By the time the travelers reach the edge of the village, the square has filled with quiet motion. No clapping, no shouting. Just eyes, watching, waiting, measuring. The first camel steps through the gate. Its lead is decorated now, beads woven into the halter, a cloth of unfamiliar pattern draped across its side. The trader beside it walks slowly, deliberately, head held high but not proud. His face is dusted with travel, his robe stained with sweat and salt. But he is home, behind him, the others follow. Some younger than you remember, some limping, one with no pack at all, just a single stick carved with symbols. They make the curve around the stones, stepping lightly, as if the dust itself might judge them, and as they pass, one of them glances at you, just a flick of the eyes, a smirk. Then, without a word, he drops a pebble at your feet. Not on purpose, not as a message, just muscle memory, but you pick it up. It's small, black, smooth. You rub your thumb over it and realize it's been polished by time, by fingers nervously tracing it on long, sleepless nights, or maybe in the hush between first and second sleep. When doubt creeps in like a thief, you pocket it without thinking. That night, the celebration begins not with music, but with stories. They eat in silence first. It's part of the ritual. Let the food speak. Let the body come home before the voice does. Then the griot gives the signal, a drumbeat, one beat, a pause, then, tell us where you went, and the stories begin. They don't speak of danger first, they speak of smells. A market in Wallada where the air was thick with fermented milk and sandalwood, a merchant who spoke in proverbs, never facts, a child who gave them directions using stars instead of roads. Then they speak of trouble, a dry well, a caravan they passed whose camels were foaming at the mouth, a message delivered by a stranger with no eyes but whose words rang true. And finally, they speak of sleep, the kind that came in bursts, at odd hours, under trees, on dunes, the kind stolen during a storm, when the wind howled like a lion and the sand felt like needles, the kind shared in silence when two traders leaned shoulder to shoulder for warmth and barely breathed. You lean in, caught by the rhythm, not just of words, but return. This is what second sleep is for, a place to store these moments, to revisit them without breaking. As the night deepens, and others drift to mats and memories, you remain beside the fire. The griot leans close. You see now, he says. You nod. You've walked no road, he continues, but you've traveled. And you know what he means, in the in-between hours, in the rituals of return, in the beat of the bell and the curve of the path you followed the gold roads without leaving the village. And the map, it's not ink and parchment. It's memory, it's dream. It's the space between first sleep and second, where truth slips in without knocking. The morning after the return carries a different weight. It's not heavy, not like grief. It's dense like a stew left to simmer all night. Everything feels richer. You walk through the square, and the air smells of ash, celebration, and something spice, maybe shea oil or the root used in that bitter morning tea. The travelers are resting now, but not deeply. You notice one of them, eyes closed, fingers twitching slightly. He's dreaming actively, probably in that liminal space of second sleep where the journey untangles itself, where his mind files away dunes and trade codes, weighing every moment he didn't have time to process under the blazing sun. You don't wake him. No one does. That kind of sleep is sacred. As the day stirs, the village begins to retell what was heard last night, but not as gossip, as scripture. A group of women sit near the well, tracing patterns in the dirt that match the route described. Children gather stones and lay them out in spirals and arcs, mimicking the caravan's return. And the griot, he's already composing, not writing, composing, testing rhythms, altering tones, sliding in half-truths and metaphors. This story won't be recorded the way Western histories are. There won't be a ledger, no documents, no archive, just breath, drum, and repetition. You sit beside him, waiting for him to speak. He does it not with words. He hands you a bundle of string. At first, it looks like nothing. One knot large and stiff that must be the dry well. A loose twist with a tiny shell may be the whisper pass. It hums with significance. The story is alive in this. You'll need that. The griot finally says, "Why me?" You ask. He shrugs. "Because the road's coming for you next." You don't laugh. Not anymore. Because you felt it? In the gaps between first and second sleep, in the pebbles, in the way you wake with fragments of songs that haven't been sung yet. You're being readied. You remember something the Tuareg elder said long ago, when you first arrived. We don't train travelers, we remember them. And you wonder now, had he seen this in you? Historians still argue whether these subtle transitions, watching, mimicking, absorbing, were part of a formal apprenticeship system or simply osmosis. But anyone who's lived inside these cycles knows it's both. One day, you're listening. The next day, you're humming. Then someone hands you a pouch and says safe roads. And that's it. You're part of the map now. That night, after the sun sinks and the fires crackle low, the first sleep comes quickly. Your body, now familiar with the rhythm, folds into it without resistance. You don't dream, not at first. Just float. And then, the voice, not a shout, not a whisper, a memory. Gold moves only where trust has gone first. You open your eyes, unsure if it was real. The village is quiet, but that phrase loops in your mind. You sit up, and beside your mat, someone has placed something, a pouch. You open it. Inside, a knot of string, a tiny carved bead shaped like a camel's head, and a folded cloth dyed the same deep blue the Tuareg were on long journeys. No note, no explanation, just permission. The wind picks up outside, gentle but insistent, and you realize, this isn't a test, it's a transition. You lie back down, heart steady. Second sleep takes you. And this time, you dream of crossroads not in the sand, but between stars, each point glowing gold, each path whispering your name. And now, as the firelight dims to a soft ember glow, and the last echoes of footsteps fade into the soil, you let yourself unwind. The stories have been told, the drums have fallen silent, even the wind seems to pause, curling gently beneath the sleeping mats as if listening for your breath. Your body settles into stillness, every limb loosening like fabric eased from a tight knot. You feel the weight of the day lift, not all at once, but gradually, like dust drifting off after a long walk. The rhythm of the gold roads fades behind you, and what remains is only this moment, soft, steady, safe. The night presses in, but not as fear, more like a warm quilt. You let your eyes close again, knowing that even in sleep, you are never truly alone. You are carried by centuries of travelers, dreamers, griots and whisperers. By the quiet strength of rituals repeated, of breaths remembered. Second sleep pulls at you one last time, gentle now, like a tide returning home. And, as your mind slips into that final fold of dreaming, a voice not quite yours murmurs something low and kind. You are part of the map now, so rest. Let the road wait. Let the gold gleam somewhere distant, untouched for now. Here, there are no tasks, no signals to decode, no routes to trace, just silence, and the soft whisper of dust settling around memory. Breathe in, let go, drift.